This is a short video on planning for a survey and some of the key considerations that we need to take when we are planning a survey. Before we embark on the survey, I think the fundamental question to ask is what data do you actually hope to obtain from the survey itself? Is it qualitative or is it quantitative? Qualitative, we're talking about things like you're looking for specific comments, statements, feelings, opinions. When you talk about quantitative, then we're looking at things like an observable trend. We're looking at numbers, potentially sales figures, participation rates, or even scores, results, etc. A very important concept when we are thinking of doing surveys is the concept of sample size. Now, sample size is basically the total amount of people you have access to and you are going to put into this survey itself. For a sample size, for a survey to have to be representative, the sample size technically needs to be in the good 20% of the total population that you're sampling. So for example, if you're sampling 5 million people, you would need at least 1 million. Okay, so how many people are you prepared to administer a survey to? Do you if you're not able to cope with such a large number, you have to understand that your survey will not be representative to a certain extent, and you have to list that down as one of the key components in your findings itself. Another concept that we will need to clarify before we start is if we're looking at interviewing people within a particular body, for example, members in a school, then your sample size can be restricted to within that school. So any sort of projection will be limited to maybe that sample size. And even if that is the case, in a school of let's say 600 students, you still need to sample 120 for it to be representative. Otherwise, it is just a projection. Now, when we look at sampling, how do you pick who to interview, right? There are two most common forms. First one is complete random sampling. Random sampling means you select any potential respondent within your sample size that comes in your survey area. You pick him up and you start asking the fella questions. The more commonly used one to introduce some sort of a consistency is systematic sampling. This is where you set a prefix indicator. It can be in the case of time, can be in the case of a specific number. So you will interview every third, fifth, or maybe 10th person that you come across. Every time the indicator comes up, you will conduct the survey. So there are issues with this as well, because in a very small sample size, if you pick a large indicator, you might just end up sampling 2 people. Okay, so if you look at a class itself, a class of 30, if you want to use systematic sampling, you would prefer to hold the number to maybe 3, not smaller than 3, because even at 3, right, you're going to interview 10 people at most. Here are some key considerations when crafting questions, or when instructing the students to craft questions, or when viewing the students crafted questions and editing it for them. First and foremost, keep the questions short and simple, because you have to bear in mind that there are going to be respondents who will not be able to make sense of too many words. So each question should only address one area. It should be really as simple as possible. Be direct, but do not direct the respondent's answer to a particular direction. Do not skew it. That is important, because once the students or even ourselves, when we come with a hypothesis, it is very normal for us to end up asking questions that will fit a particular direction that we want. It's a inherent bias in all humans. However, when we're looking at a survey, if we want it to truly be representative and truly reflect the general feeling or mood of the respondent group, we have to remember not to introduce our biases, because that will really skew your survey results. Now, for this particular sharing, I will only look at 4 general question types that we would need the students to consider when they are setting up their surveys. First and foremost is personal details. We need an area for that. Second one will be a solid yes/no answer. Third one will be range indicator. And then finally, we will look at the data entry open-ended option for question types. For personal data, it is necessary to include this information so that we can spot potential trends. Now, demographic trends can affect survey results, and it is normally not a bias we built in, but it's a resultant bias due to normally the sample size or the sample that we're looking at. I give an example, which is, for example, if you want to survey 14-year-old students who have bought a hairband before. So if you survey two different schools, one is a co-ed school, you might have half the students or the girls having bought a hairband before, but the other group that you're surveying could be a girls' school. Then you have all of them having bought a hairband before. However, if you do not track personal data, then the information and the findings from your data set will look a little strange. It will seem as if one school is infatuated with hairbands because everybody is buying a hairband, but the other school, half of them. So these are important information that can help us make more sense of the data that we end up with. So what do we normally track? Normally we track age as a key component, sex as a key component, education level, and for working adults, income group. Okay, bear in mind we do not track personal income as in per month, a specific number, or within the family, how much does the family earn per month, but we normally look at a range. This is partially to hide, allow people who are uncomfortable with declaring their income into giving you some sort of data they can work with. Now, generally, as you are looking more at quantitative data that we are collecting, close-ended questions suit such data sets and such surveys. It allows you to gather structured data. Simple contrasts can be shown through the data. It provides choices that you want to track, and inaccuracy due to option that is not present is one key problem that you have. However, respondents normally just choose the next best option among the list of options. So in this particular case, maybe you can give them couple of options, like for example you ask a question on how do you come to school, and you give them the four main options: you walk, you take the bus, you take the taxis, or you come by train. You see, now what I've done is I've actually omitted the fact that there are some people who do not take either of these. They come with their parents through private cars. However, in such a case, they will simply opt for the next nearest, or what they assume to be the nearest choice. Some of those who come in private cars may choose taxis. Some may just opt it in as I walk to school. So there are alternatives to this. Now, the range scale sort of survey questions are useful in a different way. It allows us to measure a degree of acceptance or rejection for a particular question itself. So it allows you to extract data that's pertaining to things like how much a person likes this, or how little your respondent actually has a feeling for this, or how strong the feeling is. It gives you a more qualitative way of measuring a quantitative data. It is useful for comparing differences in your respondent groups. So through this and through cross-analysis with the dataset, you can get certain information like people above 15 years old prefer certain things, people 15 and below prefer a certain thing else. So within a school context, you will be able to do a contrast on the same item across maybe things like the upper sec and the lower sec. Sometimes there isn't a contrast, sometimes there's concurrence. So both groups that you're looking at both like this particular item to the same degree, or maybe to different degrees. Key point to note is when you're providing a scale, it is important that it's an odd number scale. In a student setting, a student survey, administered survey setting, a 5-point scale would be easier to analyze. You have less variance, and it is more manageable. However, remember that when we do provide a 5-point scale, an odd number scale, you do give the respondent an opportunity to sit on the fence and give you a neutral response, neither agree or nor disagree. However, that is important because through the amount of hits on the neutral score, you can also obtain maybe it's a sensitive issue, so most people actually choose to sit on the fence and not declare what they truly feel. The final one I want to talk about is open-ended options. Now, this is normally for the ones that you are close-ended questions. but you give them a final choice, which is a location, a choice where they can insert their own answer. This would greatly enhance accuracy, but in terms of the survey data gathering and data statistics and analysis, it is only useful as a side note. Because when you have such cases, normally the option is something that it is not mainstream. So as a result of it not being mainstream, you have a very small number of people opting for the same option. You may have everybody opting to go for the open-ended choice, but everybody writing something different. So back to the earlier example of taking private transport. Okay, in that particular case, the survey, one of the answers should have been pre-crafted in as taking private transport as one of the main options. However, if you give it yet another choice which is open-ended, you may end up with a student who comes by helicopter. Yeah, and that will be totally unusual. But you have given that person a variance. Otherwise, you would have just put private vehicle. Now, just to end off, here are some bad questions that we should avoid asking. Questions that are very sensitive in nature. For example, what is your monthly income? Now, you're not likely to get an answer from them, and if you ask the students what's their family's monthly income, you might not get an accurate answer anyways. Other things like, does the weather affect your work performance? They might not want to be truthful about it. So there are things that will have implications on the respondent. You would try to maybe rephrase it so that it doesn't seem so harsh. Irrelevant questions. If, for example, the survey is on food stalls in school canteen, you ask a question like, how often do you skip lunch? Maybe it's a precursor question to why do you skip lunch? Is the food in the canteen so unappetizing? But this question is irrelevant. You do not need to ask this starter question. How often do you skip lunch? Questions that have inherent built-in bias, you should avoid at all costs. Why is Coke a better beverage than Pepsi? So in this sentence itself, you really set the respondent up to have to acknowledge that you feel Coke is a better beverage because you put it in a better position. The last type of questions that we should try to avoid are the double barrel ones. These are questions that have multiple questions built in, but one answer, one choice of answer only. So for example, is do you agree that the lack of amenities is a problem with this theme park, and the numbers of visitors should be limited? Well, what do you want to know about? What do you want the respondents to respond to? Is it about the amenities, or is it about limiting the number of visitors? So if you have two questions, don't put it in one to the responder. Give it its due course. Let it be two questions. Now, in conclusion, I think it's very important that we allow the students to think through very carefully what sort of data do they really want to analyze at the end of the day. Do they really need to do a qualitative survey? Do they need to do really 50 respondents for their quantitative survey? Do they really need to give the respondents options, right? Or is it okay? Is it perfectly fine if they just give them close-ended questions, give them a range to choose from? Would it be easier for them to identify the data that they obtain from the survey if it was numbers? Representation of the data is important. Would they want to have a whole page of quotes? Because if it's qualitative, then you're looking to draw out emotions, feelings, and you will need the quotations from the findings. Or would drawing graphs be a better representation? Or drawing a timeline or a transact or something that's graphical in nature? Would it be a better representation that they are looking for? So as a result of what they have working with the end in mind, the students need to know that they need to work with the end in mind so that they do not embark on a survey style that is not suitable for their purpose. So that is very, very important. So I hope this helps in some way. Feel free to drop me a note and you know where to find me. Okay, thank you.